I welcome you to ODM Learning. Today, I will be starting your first chapter of geography, that is your resources and development. And these are the contents that I will be completing in this particular video. We will discuss about resources, features of resources, the major classification of resources, and then the resource conservation. Let's start. First of all is, what is a resource? See students, we already have learned that a resource is something that we use to satisfy our needs. Okay, but here onwards, what you have to understand and what you have to learn new is anything, okay, that we are going to consider as a resource must have these three features. That is, the resource is anything that we are using to satisfy our need, and it must be technologically accessible, economically feasible, and culturally acceptable. Now, what exactly these three terms mean? Technologically accessible means the technology needed to use the resource must be available so that we can extract it and make proper use of it. Then we have economically feasible resources. Now, economically feasible or economic feasibility means the resource that we are going to use, they has a direct role in the economic development of a country. So, a proper resource should be economically beneficial for both the producer and user. And then we have culturally acceptable. This means that the resources that we are using, it must be accepted by the people. It must not disturb or hurt their sentiments, culture, surroundings, and home, etc. Here we can take example of current scenario, that is, see, as we all are locked down and we know why it happened. Okay, it happened because of the Chinese culture of eating bat, rats, and other insects, isn't it? That is not acceptable in our culture. So, if you are trying to opt some kind of resource that needs to be culturally acceptable in the community, in the society, then only that becomes a resource. Now we will discuss about the interrelationship between physical environment, technology, and institution. See, resource is a thing that we human use to make our life more comfortable. So, as a human, we are the core of this, and we depend on physical environment, that is nature, to get the resource. Then we apply our technology through developing institutions to use the resource in more valuable way. So human beings interact with nature through technology and create institutions to increase their economic development. And we must also understand the resources are not free as assumed by many of us. Resources are a function of human activities. They transfer material available in our environment into resources and use them. Now here one thing is written that resources are a function of human activities. Now how? Now this statement means if we talk about any resource, let it be a pen. Then what is the use of pen? We use pen to write something, isn't it? So what is the function of pen? The function of pen is we use it for writing something. Okay, so that action is taken by human activity. Okay, so that is why any resource, they are called as a function of human activities because we are using it to in our activity. Let us consider following example. Think you have a diesel natural resource from nature. Then you have a car that runs on diesel and the technology of diesel refineries. And then we have car factories and diesel refineries. So if diesel is not present, the other two will not be there. And if technology is not there, then there will not be diesel refineries. And there will be no way we can use diesel properly. And if institution is not there, what is the use of technology? As we cannot produce the technology without the institutions like factories. Therefore, all these are interrelated, interdependent upon each other. If one will not be there, the other can't exist. So, we can conclude that human beings interact with nature. They use technology to transform material available in the environment into resources, and they create institutions to accelerate their resource development. Now, next we have is the classification of resources. See, in this standard, we will study majorly four bases of resource classification, that are on the basis of origin, biotic and abiotic, on the basis of exhaustibility, renewable and non-renewable, on the basis of ownership, individual resources, community owned resources, national resources, and international resources. Then, on the basis of development, we have developed or actual resource, potential resource, stock, and reserves. Now, let's discuss each one of these classification in detail. The first one is your biotic resources and abiotic resources. These classification is based on the basis of origin of resources. So, your biotic resource are those resources that we obtain from biosphere. They consist of living components, for example, plants, animals, bacteria, livestock, fishes, anything which are living, which have living compound, and we get from biosphere. On the opposite, abiotic resources, they are obtained from non-living components of the environment, for like your lithosphere, atmosphere, and hydrosphere. For example, from lithosphere we get soil, we get raw minerals, we get rocks. From atmosphere we get various gases, we get air. From hydrosphere we get various sources of water. So, abiotic resources are non-living components that we obtain from your abiotic resources are non-living components. Okay. Now next one is your on the basis of exhaustibility or supply or continuity. This means that a resource that is available to us to what extent of the period, whether it is available to us for few days or few years or few generations. Okay, it's like that. Will the resource is going to be with me for 10 days, for 10 years, or 1,000 years? So, up to what extent of period I can use a resource? On that basis, we have renewable resources and non-renewable resources. Renewable resources are those resources which can be reused and renewed. They are very good for the environment. They do not cause any pollution, and so they are called sustainable resources. Examples like air, water, wind, sunlight. And there is one thing, that their rate of renewal is greater than the rate of getting exhausted. And then we have non-renewable resources. These resources are the resources which cannot be renewed or reused once utilized, and these resources are the main cause of pollution. For this reason, we can also say these resources are exhaustible resources, because they have a source of it. Once the source is exhausted, then we won't be able to use non-renewable resources in near future. For example, fossil fuels, LPG gas, etc. And one other thing is, their rate of renewal is slower than the rate of getting exhausted. This means that the demand of non-renewable resource is very high, whereas the supply is not up to that rate. That is the reason why it is said the rate of renewal is slower than the rate of getting exhausted. Our next one is on the basis of ownership. We have individual resources, community owned resources, national resources, and international resources. Individual resources are the resources which are owned privately by individuals. For example, in village, farmer owns their land, pasture lands, ponds, plantation, kitchen gardens. In urban areas, people own their plots, houses, and other property like whether it's a car, it's a motorbike, or whatsoever it may be. Whatever they own by themselves, okay, privately, individually, those resources are called as individual resources. And then we have community owned resources. See, community owned resources are those resources which are accessible to all the members of the community. For example, in villages, we have common grazing grounds, burial grounds, village ponds, whereas in urban areas, we have public parks, playgrounds, picnic spots, religious spaces, malls, markets, etc. Now next one is your national resources and international resources. See, national resources are those resources which are owned by the particular nation. It belongs to the nation only, whereas the other nation people do not have any right to use. For example, roads, canals, railways, water resources, minerals, forest, wildlife, and area within the political boundaries as well as the territorial water. Here I have put territorial water in a star mark because it comes usually as 1 mark MCQ. So here you should understand what exactly we mean by territorial water. Territorial water is the oceanic area up to 12 nautical miles or 22.2 km from the coastline of the country. Remember, it is up to the 12 nautical miles of oceanic area from the coastline of the country. Now let's discuss international resources. These are the resources which belong to all the countries of the world and are regulated by some international institutions like International Resource Panel under United Nations Environment. See, every country is given some rights over the oceans to a specific range. For example, we can say territorial water, and then the oceanic resources beyond 200 nautical miles of the exclusive economic zone EEZ belong to open ocean, and no individual country can utilize these without the concurrence or permission of international institution. So international resource here example would be the open ocean beyond exclusive economic zone. Now one thing that you have to understand here and remember is exclusive economic zone. See, like territorial water, exclusive economic zone is a oceanic area that extend up to 200 nautical miles or 370 km out from a country's coastline towards sea. And this area is specifically governed by the country on the basis of functional rights like or up to 200 nautical miles, the country has the right to explore or to exploit or do any kind of research procedures regarding marine resources. So that they can the up to 200 nautical miles, the water bodies can be utilized for economic benefit. So that reason is explained as exclusive economic zone. So up to 12 nautical miles we have territorial water, then up to 200 nautical miles we have exclusive economic zone, and beyond that would be your international resource, open ocean. Next one is your actual or developed resource and potential resources. See, actual resource or developed resource is that which humans have discovered, developed over a long time and are currently in use. The actual quantity of an actual resource is known to us. An actual resource might have been a potential resource in the past. It may end up in the future. For example, most of the water, fossil fuels, minerals, plants and animals that we are using in day-to-day life are considered as developed resources. Their quality and quantity have been determined for utilization. Now next is your potential resources. Natural elements which are already easily available but humans are not yet to discover their real use are potential resources. They are not being used currently. The entire quantity of a potential resource may not be known to us. A potential resource can prove useful and become an actual resource in the future. For example, uranium deposits in Ladakh that can be used to generate energy, but as we are unable to develop the technology to do so, we are not using it. Also, solar and wind energy are two natural resources which have a high potential for human life. Though we are using it, we can use them even more in the future once we understand their true potential. Your next one is stock and reserves. Now here, stock means the resource that have the potential to satisfy human needs, but human beings do not have the required technology to assess them. It means that they know that there is a resource, but they do not know how to use that resource, or they do not know what is the technology to assess a particular resource. Now, for example, see, we have a lot of water sources in our country, and we know water is a compound of hydrogen and oxygen. So, hydrogen can be used as the source of energy, but we do not have the technical knowledge how to use it for this purpose, and as a result, hydrogen is considered as the stock for a country. Now next one is your reserves. See, resources that can be used with the help of existing technical knowledge, but their use has not been started. It's like you are keeping the resource in safe. So example, water in the dams, reserve forest, etc. We have the resource, we know how to use it, but we are not using it, then that resource becomes a reserves. Now, your next is why we need to be concerned over the use of resources. See, we human beings, okay, we need resources for our survival as well as to maintain the quality of life. Resources are not free, but when it was considered so, human beings started to use them irrationally, and this has led to the greed of a this has led to following problems. For example, depletion of resources for satisfying the greed of few individuals. It's just like someone is very powerful, so that person or that country will try to collect all the resources to itself. It's like depletion, and they will try to accumulate and use and store the resource by themselves. Accumulation of resource in few hands resulted in division of society into rich and poor segments. Okay, when we consider resource not free, what we do is we use them irrationally, and as a result, what will happen? There would be accumulation of resources in some of the sectors or segments of the society, and then indiscriminate exploitation of resources that leads to global ecological crisis like global warming, pollution, land degradation, drought, etc. See, equal distribution of resources has become essential for a sustained quality of life and global peace. Resource planning is essential for sustainable existence of all forms of life. Now here, a vicious circle through which I just wanted to clarify what exactly we mean by sustainable development. See, sustainable development is seen as a way to achieve resource conservation. So it is a way to achieve resource conservation, and it means whenever we want to opt for a development, we need to consider three factors. That is, whatever development we want to do, the development should be economically viable. It should not be a burden for a country, okay, at individual level and to the nation, to the world at large. And then the cost of development should be bearable to the environment. It should not be like that you are planning for a development and that results in environment degradation. The development cost should be bearable by the environment. It means that our environment must be able to stand by the progress or the development work, whatever we want to decide. And the third one is, when we talk about development, a development should be aimed at making equal society. Okay, then only a sustainable development will be a reality someday. So here now we should know from where this concept of sustainable development came. See, in 1987, it was first advocated in the Butland Commission report. Okay, it introduces the concept of sustainable development, and it also advocated it as means for resource conservation, which was published in the book entitled Our Common Future. And then in 1992, we also had the International Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. That was also a great contribution after the Butland Commission report in 1987. Okay, these are the steps that are taken at the global platform to plan for sustainable development. So in 1992, which was the first International Earth Summit at Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, the assembled leaders, probably around 178 countries attended this summit. Okay, and those leaders from those countries, they signed a declaration that they declare so and so on global climatic change and biological diversity. The Rio Convention endorsed the global forest principles and adopted Agenda 21 for achieving sustainable development in the 21st century. Now here, the definition that was written in the Butland Commission was like, sustainable development or sustainable economic development means development should take place without damaging the environment, and development in the present should not compromise with the needs of the future generations. Now let's discuss what was exactly Agenda 21. See, in 1987, during the Butland Commission, it was targeted that till 2021 they would try to achieve sustainable development. Okay, and Agenda 21 was that declaration signed by all the leaders in 1992 at the United Nations Conference on Environment and Development, which was the first international Earth Summit, which took place at Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. It aims at achieving global sustainable development. It is an agenda to combat majorly three things: environmental damage, diseases, poverty, through global cooperation on common interest, mutual needs, and shared responsibility. This means that all the leaders of the countries who signed this declaration, they shared their goals. Okay, they shared their opinion, they shared their responsibility and common interest, and then they identified that these are the three major points from where we can start to work towards sustainable development. And one major objective of the Agenda 21 was that every local government should draw its own local Agenda 21. It means that at a global level we have one Agenda 21, and when it comes to a nation, then that nation should also plan for an local agenda that would be very much comfortable within the political powers of the country. So students, after this, I guess you people are all clear about it. I have added few questions here, like classify resources on the basis of origin that we know, biotic and abiotic now. Which one of the following mineral is a fossil fuel? I hope you can very much you can very much easily identify the resource here. Then which type of resource is iron ore? You can write it. Then how is the issue of sustainability important for development, and explain with examples. Examples I have given. Whatever here you can write with contrast to your economic viability. Okay, environment, bearability of environment, and social equitability. Okay, then under which of the following type of resource tidal energy cannot be put? So it's written cannot be put, so you can identify these questions. See, with this, I would like to end today's video, and I will again come back with the continuation of it.